The engine was still humming. That was the first thing Officer Neil Granger noticed when he climbed up into the cab of the abandoned rig, parked awkwardly at mile marker 721 on the Northwest Territories ice road. Snow whipped sideways in a blinding fury outside, but in here, it was warm. Too warm. The kind of warmth that shouldn't exist when the driver's seat was empty. The windshield cracked from inside, and the only sign of life was the slow, rhythmic blinking of the dashboard light. And carved right below the tachometer, dug deep into the plastic, was a symbol, a sharp angled spiral, encircled by tiny triangles. It looked old, intentional, like a warning or a ritual. Granger's breath fogged as he stared at it. His radio crackled in the background, but he didn't answer, because this wasn't just another trucker gone rogue. This was the third one, and all of them gone without a trace. "I heard something breathing." Those were the last words Danny Koval said to his dispatcher, 13 hours before the rig was found. His voice had been low, almost distracted, like he didn't want to be heard, like he was hiding something. Danny wasn't new to the road. At 39, he'd survived black ice pileups, equipment failures, frostbite, and even a drunken moose charging his trailer outside Tuktoyaktuk. He knew the rules of the ice. Never stop for shadows. Never cross the blue cracks, and never, ever sleep too long. But something about this run had felt wrong. 3 nights earlier, when he'd fueled up in Inuvik, the woman at the counter wouldn't make eye contact. She slid his receipt over with shaking hands and whispered, "They take the lungs first, then the eyes." Danny had laughed it off, until he saw the symbol carved into the fuel pump housing in the exact same pattern. The same damn thing now cut into his dashboard. His wife, Lena, had called him that morning, her voice soft with worry. "You sound tired, Dan. Maybe skip this one." "Can't. It's good money. Private haul for some mining exec. Easy miles. Besides, I need the cash." She paused. "I had that dream again. The one where you fall through. It's just a road, baby. Ice holds." She never said goodbye. The rig's interior told its own story. A steaming cup of coffee in the holder. Unfinished radio chatter looping on the CB. And in the glove box, wedged behind the insurance papers, was a photo. 3 men, arms slung over each other, grinning in a frozen yard. Danny was on the left. The man in the middle, Mick Cale, had gone missing last week. And the one on the right, Kobe Venn, was found dead in his cab just yesterday. His chest cavity split open, organs missing. No blood, no tracks, only that same ancient Inuit spiral carved into his windshield with something sharper than steel. What scared Granger most wasn't the missing men. It was how neat everything looked. As if someone or something wanted the trucks to be found. Like the rigs themselves had been offered. Flashback. 2021, Danny's first ice road run. The old-timers had warned him. "You ever hear silence so loud it crushes your ribs?" one had asked. "That's the road telling you to turn back." Danny thought it was superstition. But even then, he'd seen things, brief shapes in the rearview, patterns forming in the frost, whispers beneath his tires. He chalked it up to sleep deprivation. But he never forgot what the elder Inuit mechanic told him in Fort Good Hope. "You treat the road like a god, not a route. It remembers who curses it, and it takes what it's owed." Present day. Granger stepped out of the cab, blinking against the wind. His breath caught in his throat. Not from the cold, but from what he saw a few meters ahead. Another rig. Identical haul, same route. Parked dead in the snow, headlights still on. He hadn't heard any call about a second rig. He radioed dispatch. Static. And then, the cold voice of a man he didn't recognize whispered through the receiver. "The ice doesn't crack. Unless it wants to." Why were the rigs left like invitations? Why no bodies, only symbols? Why had Danny's last call sounded like he was smiling? Granger looked down. Beside his boot, half buried in snow, was a patch of torn flannel, and beneath it, a human tooth. The flannel scraps still clung to the frozen tooth, crusted with something darker than blood. Officer Granger didn't speak. Not even when his radio emitted another whisper, one not meant for ears. It said only this: "They aren't gone. They're hollowed." The second truck's cab light flickered in the whiteout. Still running. Still warm. But no footprints in the snow. Not a single one. The air inside the second rig was cleaner. Too clean. Not the kind of clean you get from Lysol or hand wipes, but that clinical, hospital-grade sterility that burned the inside of your nostrils and made your gums itch. Granger stepped inside, boots crunching lightly on the rubber mat. The dashboard glowed soft blue, casting ghostly light across the seats. The logbook was open. Last entry, mile 719. Saw Danny's rig. No driver. Approaching slow. "Something's wrong." Scrawled hurriedly. Ink smudged, as if the pen had jerked in the driver's hand mid-sentence. The rest of the seat was empty, except for the seatbelt buckled tight, pulled hard around nothing. Victim's emotional POV, Kobe Venn. He felt it before he saw it. A vibration through the steering wheel. A whisper through the vents. Like the hum of something deep beneath the ice. Not mechanical, not man-made. It moved like a heartbeat. Slow. Ancient. Patient. Kobe's last call was short. "Danny's rig's here. Lights on. I'm going in." "Keep your line open, Kobe," dispatch replied. "Yeah, sure. Just hold on." Something's. There was a scraping sound then. Not from outside. From the sleeper compartment behind him. As if something had been waiting inside the whole time. Granger checked the back. Nothing. Not even bedding. No signs of struggle, no blood, no glass. Just a faint, lingering smell of iodine and wet earth. And then he saw it. The symbol. Same spiral. Same triangles. But this time, it was carved into flesh. A piece of scalp, wedged under the seat, hair still attached. The skin stretched thin like a patch torn from someone's crown. Underneath the spiral were 3 small tally marks. 3. As in 3 truckers. 3 offerings. Flashback. 2023. Kobe's hospital stay. He'd survived a collision with a moose the size of a sedan. Crushed his ribs, broke his clavicle, and knocked him out cold. When he woke up in the hospital, there were 2 men in parkas beside his bed, silent, pale, watching. Not family. Not doctors. They left when the nurse came in. Later, a different nurse whispered as she changed his 4. "They work with the ones who take body parts. Always remote victims. No cameras. No questions." "You mean traffickers?" he asked, woozy. "Worse. Harvesters." Back in the cab, Granger noticed a black thumb drive jammed into the AUX port. No label. No dust. He took out his phone, hesitated, then pressed play. First static. Then a distorted voice. Male. Raspy. Calm. Deliberate. "They think the roads belong to them. But this ice was traded. Blood for passage. Skin for fuel. The debt is due." Then came a sound Granger would never forget. Wet cutting. Bone snapping. And worst of all, laughter. Twist build up. That night, Granger returned to his station and pulled the records. All 3 drivers had been part of a private shipment booked by a shadow company listed only as Nake Logistics. No registered office. No public listing. But deeper in the police archives, he found a 2018 incident. 2 truckers vanished on the same route. Back then, the rigs were never found. But their livers had turned up, shipped anonymously to a Calgary lab. Frozen. Intact. Marked with the same spiral. Psychological tension. Granger couldn't sleep. He kept hearing the engine hum in his ears. Smelling the cold metal of the rig. Tasting that awful antiseptic on his tongue. In the dark, his mind replayed the whispers. "They're not gone. They're hollowed. Lungs first. Eyes last. This ice remembers." And then the voice he recognized. His own wife, from a dream he didn't remember. "They don't take your soul. They leave it. Trapped in the rig." By morning, Granger called the only person who might know more. An elder Inuit woman, known only as Amik. She answered after 1 ring. "You saw the spiral, didn't you?" "Yes." "What does it mean?" "It means they didn't die. Not yet. They were taken below." "Below what?" "Below the road." The map on Granger's desk shifted. Not from wind, not from his breath, but like it was breathing, pulsing beneath the paper, the veins of the ice road expanding outward with every beat. Right where the 3 trucks had been found, the topography had warped slightly, as if the road itself had opened and swallowed something whole. Officer Neil Granger hadn't slept since the second rig. His eyes were sunken. His hands trembled as he unfolded the thick-creased map of the Northwest Territories, a government-issued copy from 1992. But this one was different. Amick had handed it to him with a warning. This map isn't for finding your way. It's for knowing what to avoid. Granger circled the mile markers where Danny, Kobe, and Mick's rigs were found. Mile 719, 721, and 725, all within a 10-kilometer stretch. The road there wasn't marked as unstable or seasonal. Instead, in faded red ink, a word was stamped diagonally across that sector. The place beneath. Victim's POV, Mick Cale. Mick had driven that stretch 100 times. But this night, something shifted. The ice beneath his tires went from the usual sharp vibration to a slow, syrupy roll, like a wave under glass. His windshield started fogging from the outside, the frost curling inward, forming spirals. He turned up the defroster. Nothing. Then a scream. Not from the CB. From the cab. Right behind him. Inside the sleeper. "Help me, Mick. I'm still here." He jerked around. No one. But on the mattress, his own coat, soaked in sweat. And something had written on it in salt. "Give. Or take." He never radioed again. Back to present. Granger's descent. Amick took Granger north, past government checkpoints, past active routes, down a side path no longer plowed. The wind howled like it knew their names. They stopped at a frozen lake ringed with rusted trailer husks and rotting wooden stakes. Amick called it the Whale's Eye, a natural sinkhole, covered in shifting layers of ice that looked solid from above, but below, hollow. Granger kneeled and placed a thermal sensor against the ice. It should have read -40 degrees Celsius. Instead, +5 degrees Celsius. Something was alive under there. Flashback, 2020. Danny's haul to the Whale's Eye. Danny had taken a private job, unmarked crates, cash up front. No questions. The loaders wore white jumpsuits. Not Arctic gear. No logos. One whispered, "Don't stop. If you hear knocking, don't check it. It's not the ice." That night, Danny felt a vibration in the trailer. Then the thump. Then the voice. Childlike. Broken. "It's so cold. I didn't say yes." He never spoke of that run again. Psychological tension. Granger stood over the Whale's Eye with a flashlight, its beam dying against the dense darkness beneath the glassy ice. He swore he saw movement. A shape, no, a face. Eyes open, staring back. And then it grinned, a mouth too wide, teeth not human, and spiraled into its brow, the mark. Discovery. The hidden chamber. Amick led him around the edge of the eye to a rusted hatch half buried in the snow. Granger pried it open, cold metal shrieking, and descended a ladder into an abandoned monitoring station built by a defunct mining corp in the 80s. But the station wasn't empty. Inside were suspended slabs of ice, each containing something inside. Not corpses. Not completely. People. Alive. But wrong. One man had no face, just smooth skin. Another had his chest carved open, lungs missing. Yet his fingers twitched. And in the corner, Kobe's jacket. The tape recorder. On the metal table was a recorder. Granger pressed play. A researcher's voice. Panicked. "The spiral isn't a symbol. It's a lock. The more we cut into the ice, the more they woke up. These aren't spirits. They're collectors. And the truckers." A thud. A scream. "They're the payment. One organ at a time. That's why they keep coming. That's why the trucks stay warm." Twist build up. Back above ground, Granger's phone buzzed. A message from the police database finally loaded. Nake Logistics had filed paperwork just 3 months ago for a new permit. And guess who signed it? Dr. Marius Keene, former surgeon stripped of his license in 2017 for running illegal transplant trials on remote indigenous populations. His last known location? Mile 720. At 2:17 a.m., the ice groaned. Not the usual shift of cold on cold, but a deep, ancient howl that rumbled from beneath the earth like something enormous was stretching awake. Above the whale's eye, Granger watched with wide, disbelieving eyes as a spiral-shaped crack began carving itself across the frozen surface. Not randomly, with purpose, like it was being drawn from underneath. The air turned electric. Granger's breath fogged out in waves, but his skin burned hot, as if a fever had seized the atmosphere. The cold around him wasn't natural anymore. Felt sentient. Amick gripped his shoulder. Her voice trembled. "Don't move. It's choosing." Victim's emotional POV. Mick Cale. Last moments. Mick had tried to escape. He turned his rig around after seeing Kobe's truck. Engine running, cab empty, seatbelt buckled around no one. He sped back toward Inuvik, but the road began to vanish in his mirrors. Literally. Every time he checked, the tracks behind him were gone. Wiped clean. Like the road was erasing his presence in real time. He whispered into the CB. "Anyone hear me? I don't think I'm driving on ice anymore. I think I'm above something." Then static. Then a whisper back. "You were never above it. You've always been inside it." That was Mick's last known transmission. Back to present, the spiral fracture expands. Granger kneeled at the edge of the whale's eye, staring down into the black spiral etched through layers of frost and snow. Each ring shimmered with colors that didn't belong in this world. Oily greens, bruised violets, pulsing reds. Then he noticed it. At the center of the spiral, just beneath the ice, a figure, floating, arms spread like a crucifix, eyes open, mouth sewn shut with wire, and carved across his chest, "Organs due." Flashback, 2019. Dr. Marius Keene's final medical report. Redacted. Granger had pulled the report just hours earlier. Specimens found preserved beneath frost layer show cellular regeneration far beyond clinical norms. One subject missing liver and right lung, yet displays synaptic activity and minor reflex twitching. Recommendation: harvest and replicate under clinical quarantine. It ended with a cryptic final note. Subject still attempting communication. Began drawing spirals in blood on walls of containment chamber. That patient, name redacted, but a second file labeled the transfer destination. NAIC Logistics, Remote Freezer Unit 3. Inside the whale's eye, descent into the hollow ice. Amick handed Granger a thermal crowbar. Hit the eye. 3 times. No more. He obeyed. First strike, a dull echo like tapping a bone. Second, a hollow ring, deep, cavernous. Third, the ice shattered inward. Not cracked, collapsed as if the center had never been solid. Steam hissed up from below. The ground shifted. A staircase of frost-covered ribs was revealed, literal, human-sized ribs spiraling downward like vertebrae carved into the tunnel walls. And down there, lights. Electric. Flickering. Someone was down there. Psychological tension, the descent. Granger climbed down with each step echoing like a heartbeat. The walls were wet. Not with melting water, but something slicker, stickier. Not ice. Not blood. Something in between. As he reached the first level, he passed what looked like a surgical chair, bolted into the wall. Rusted. Belts torn. But on the armrest, dried skin flakes and fingernail scratches. "They operate down here," Amick whispered behind him. "But not with anesthesia. They want the soul to feel it leave. Twist build up. The chamber of the taken." Granger stepped into a vast cavern lined with rig parts. Mirrors, steering wheels, diesel tanks. All twisted and welded into grotesque sculptures of human anatomy. In the center, 3 slabs. And on each slab, the truckers. Danny, Mick, Kobe. But not as he remembered. Danny was breathing slowly, but his eyes were glassy. His chest was open, hollowed. Yet, the heart still pulsed inside a clear casing. Kobe had no lips, just a sewn mouth, and carvings etched into his forehead. He agreed. The contract is binding. Mick was missing, or so Granger thought, until he turned and saw a fourth slab being prepared. For him. Flashback, 1995. Granger's father's disappearance. Granger had been 9 when his father, also an officer, vanished during a winter transport mission. They'd said the rig fell through the ice, but the body was never found. Only the rig was recovered, engine still warm, and carved into the windshield, the same spiral, the same symbol, the same curse. Granger's mother had said one thing before losing her mind completely. The road is hungry. You're next. Back to present. The whale's eye opens wider. Suddenly, machinery above began to whir, gears grinding, hydraulic pressure building. Granger looked up and saw the rigs being lowered from above. All 3, each suspended on cables like offerings, their cabs glowing red, cargo trailers empty. And then, a voice boomed through the chamber. The ice is paid in parts. The heart delivers the soul. The lungs carry the debt. You signed your name the moment you opened the eye. The blood wasn't smeared. It was etched, perfect spirals drawn with surgical precision on the steel slab Granger now stood beside. His name was there, not just written, carved. Years ago, in blood that tested as his own. But Granger had never been here before. At least not in any life he could remember. The chamber pulsed. Every metal rig part fused into the cave walls glowed faintly, pulsing like veins under skin. Granger stepped back, eyes locked on the slabs, on Danny, Kobe, and the third slab now empty, wires twitching like veins waiting for flesh. And above it, a plaque. Neil Granger, lung donor pending. Victim's emotional POV. Danny Koval, from within the slab. He couldn't scream. He tried. The moment they opened his chest, something in him had fractured. But not just the bones, his memory, his sense of time. He felt frozen and awake, like watching himself from outside. He remembered Kobe crying, whispering prayers in his stitched mouth. He remembered Mick trying to bite through the restraints with broken teeth. He remembered the sound of Granger's name. They'd been saying it for days. Back to present. Granger's shock and descent into doubt. His hands shook as he ran them over the etched spiral beside his name. He checked his chest, his lungs worked. His body was whole. He'd never had surgery, never donated blood. But now he remembered 1988, a childhood pneumonia, the near-death episode. His mother had rushed him to a private clinic. She never talked about what happened during those 3 days. All she ever said was, "They gave you back to me, but something else was attached." Flashback. Granger's mother. 1999, 1 year before her death. She was mumbling in her hospital bed, skin gray, eyes rimmed in red. "Your father signed the waiver. He was desperate. He wanted you to live, so he paid with his next shipment." "What shipment?" Granger asked. She turned her head slowly. "The one where he vanished." Twist build-up. Nake Logistics contract chamber. At the rear of the underground chamber, behind a rusted rig chassis embedded in the wall, was a vault door. It hissed as Amick opened it with a carved bone key she wore on a leather string. Inside, a library of contracts. Old, smelling of iron and earth. Not digital. All handwritten. All in red ink. Granger's fingers scanned the shelf. Name, organ, date, payment, status. Most said complete. Some, pending. And a few, disturbingly, said inescapable. He found his father's folder. Inside, a note. James Granger. Liver for son's lungs. Payment due, February 6, 1996. Status, paid. Body unrecovered. Consciousness transferred. Granger dropped the file. His knees buckled. My father didn't disappear. He was taken. And what had he been paid for? His own lungs. He had been breathing on borrowed time. Psychological tension. The unsealing ritual. The chamber lights dimmed. Machinery above roared to life again. From high above, a figure descended, not on a ladder, not on a rope. It floated. A man in a black coat with a surgical mask. His eyes pitch black, unblinking. Dr. Marius Keene. But his face was wrong. waxen, mask-like, as if worn by something else. He looked at Granger, smiled behind the mask. "You don't remember signing. You weren't supposed to." "I never did," Granger spat. Keen's voice deepened, echoed. "You breathed. That was your signature. You lived. That was your consent." Behind him, the slabs began to hum. Danny twitched. Kobe's stitched mouth opened into a silent scream. Flashback, NAIC Logistics, Hidden Ties. A secret file recovered from a whistleblower leaked in 2022 showed NAIC had received funding from private biotech firms, all of which had gone bankrupt and vanished within months. One paragraph stood out. Test subjects harvested from isolated Arctic routes showed higher regenerative capacity post-organ removal, especially when harvested in emotionally heightened states of fear. The spiral carving increases compliance. Symbol appears to access subconscious contract triggers. They weren't just organ traffickers. They were soul brokers. Back to present. The last door. Behind Dr. Keen, the final chamber began to open. Granger could see inside. A white sterile room, unlike the rest of the frozen hell. Monitors lined the walls. A metal table at the center. And on that table, a child. Breathing tubes. Spiral drawn on her chest. "She's the next," Keen said. "You can take her place, Granger. Break your cycle. Or walk away and let the road claim her." "Who is she?" he whispered. Keen leaned in. "Your daughter. Born the moment you crossed into the eye. Time bends down here. Choices echo backward." Granger staggered. He had no daughter. No child. Not yet. As Granger stared into the sterile white chamber, something inside him fractured. The girl on the table, the child he swore didn't exist, turned her head and blinked, eyes just like his. And when her lips parted, only 2 words came out. "Don't trade." But the spiral on her chest began to glow, turning slowly backward, as if time itself had been placed on the slab. Silence. Then the hum returned. Low, ancient, vibrating the ribs of the cavern like an underground storm. Amick whispered behind him, "You feel it, don't you? The road remembering, the price unraveling. The spiral is not just a mark, it's a clock, and when it turns back, the dead return too." Granger stepped closer to the girl's slab, the floor beneath his boots vibrating in sync with her heartbeat. Every beat sent a ripple through the spiral, and every ripple turned the clock backward. Victim's emotional POV. Kobe Venn, half-conscious, dream state. Kobe felt the time shift before he saw it. His stitched mouth burned. But in his mind, clear now, he was driving again. On the road. Cold wind. The song he always played echoing through his cab. But something was different. His dashboard showed the date as February 2nd, 2025. 3 days before he disappeared. "I can fix it," he thought. "I can warn them. I can stop the route." Then, a woman's voice over the CB. "You already tried, Kobe. You just forgot." Flashback. The Spiral Research Project. Leaked 2007 tape. Granger had found the tape in the NAIC vault, buried under expired permits and falsified organ registry papers. The voice was calm, controlled. A woman researcher. "Our early tests confirm that the spiral activates neurological loops. Subjects begin to remember things that haven't happened yet. Time folds around emotional trauma. The symbol seems to store time, rewrite it, compress it. One subject remembered her own autopsy. Another predicted his daughter's death before she was born." Back to present. The spiral's pull on Granger. Granger stood frozen as the walls around him began to pulse. The spiral wasn't just on the girl's chest anymore. It was now glowing, inside the surgical lines that had once been carved into Danny, Kobe, and the missing Mick. Each glow pulsed faster, then reversed. Tissue reknit. Scars vanished. Organs regrew. Blood flowed backward. But none of them woke, because they weren't trapped by the wounds. They were trapped by the choice. Psychological tension. Granger's decision fractures reality. He stepped toward the girl. Her eyes were open now, watching him without blinking. The red spiral on her chest spun faster. "Who are you?" Granger whispered. "Am I your father?" She didn't answer, but her eyes filled with tears that ran upward, back into her tear ducts. Then came his mother's voice. "You breathe because your father gave his liver. He signed for you. Now you've signed for her." The spiral remembers bloodlines. His hands shook. This was the moment. Either he steps onto the slab, or leaves the girl to become the next hollow host. Flashback, Officer James Granger's final run, 1996. Unreleased audio recovered by Amic. Recorded just before Officer James Granger vanished. "They told me it was just a delivery, a vial, some experimental compound. But the spiral, it's everywhere. On the windshield, in the snow patterns, in the ice cracks. I made the trade. I signed the paper. My son's lungs for this liver. They said I'd be free. But they didn't say I'd keep breathing. Without a body." Final words before static. "Tell Neil he was worth it." Back to present. The chamber splits. Suddenly the chamber cracked. Not just the floor. Time. Reality began splitting down the middle. A deep fissure that revealed two versions of the same moment. On the left, Granger on the slab, eyes closed, body still. The girl waking, free. On the right, Granger walking away. The girl's spiral spinning faster, until she began to scream, and her chest imploded, lungs dissolving into black ash. Amic screamed behind him, "You can't choose both. One breath saved you. One breath must pay." Twist build up, the spiral loop. Granger fell to his knees, clutching his head. He saw everything all at once. Danny, screaming beneath the ice in a childhood memory he never had. Kobe whispering prayers he hadn't yet spoken. His father, trapped inside a truck, reliving his own dismemberment endlessly. "This isn't hell," Granger whispered. "It's a loop, a harvest loop. The spiral isn't death. It's replay." Dr. Keene's voice echoed behind him, colder than the ice. "Correct. The spiral doesn't kill. It resets. The harvest never ends because the debt is time. And time is infinite." The final moment. Granger placed a hand on the girl's chest. Her heartbeat synced with his. "I'll do it," he whispered. "But you have to let the others go." "No deals," Keene said. "Only trade. Then take it." Granger exhaled, and the spiral on the girl's chest stopped. Reversed. Turned white. A single breath left Granger's lips, and became visible. It drifted upward, spiraled, and vanished into the ceiling. And then silence. In the rig, 10 minutes later, Danny opened his eyes. Kobe gasped like he'd been underwater. The fourth slab was empty. Granger was gone. The girl sat up, breathing, alive. She whispered, "He signed it in breath, not in blood." The rigs were empty. The slabs, silent. The chambers below the whales I now buried in solid ice. But across the snow, carved by wind or something older, the spiral still marked the earth. And 20 kilometers south, a new truck rumbled across the ice road. Its tires skipping once, twice, then slowing. In the back seat, a CB radio crackled to life. "Dispatch, I'm seeing a weird light under the ice. Looks like it's moving." 3 weeks later, Inuvik Regional Clinic. The girl Granger saved had no ID. No known relatives. No name. She couldn't speak, but she drew spirals on the paper pads the nurses gave her. Always in reverse. Always red. She didn't cry. Didn't laugh. But sometimes, in her sleep, she whispered. Words they couldn't place. An ancient dialect. Until one night a nurse translated it by accident, while listening to an old Inuit elder through a recording device. The phrase the girl kept saying? "He's still driving." Victim's emotional POV, Neil Granger, now. He was inside the rig, but not the one he remembered. The interior was colder. The steering wheel slick with frost. The spiral carved into the dashboard now pulsed softly beneath his hand. He looked down at himself, still in uniform, still breathing, but no reflection in the cracked mirror above. He turned the key. The engine roared alive. In the distance, lights blinked. 3 other rigs driving slowly through the storm. Danny, Kobe, Mick, alive. I bought their time, Granger whispered. With mine. But he was still moving. Still needed. Because the spiral didn't end. It just reloaded. Flashback, 1974. The first harvested driver. An old black and white photo unearthed in a forgotten part of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police archive shows a rig turned over near Great Bear Lake. The driver had been dismembered, heart and lungs gone, eyes wide open. On the ground nearby was a symbol no one could explain. Not until now. The spiral. Drawn perfectly in blood. No footprints. No evidence. Just an engine still warm. And one phrase etched into the side panel of the truck. He lives so others may die. He dies so others may live. Back to present the final message. Amick stood alone above the whale's eye, now frozen shut with jagged spirals buried under a thick sheet of blackened ice. She lit a small oil lamp and whispered to the wind. Spirals do not end. They return. Behind her, a snowmobile approached. A young RCMP officer stepped off, helmet under his arm. He looked familiar, too familiar. Same eyes as Granger. Same gait, but younger. I had a dream, he said, about a road made of ribs. What's your name, son? Amick asked, barely able to speak. He paused, looked off toward the ice road. Neil. Neil James Granger. Twist build up, blood memory and the spiral's inheritance. In her lap, the girl from the clinic, now older, walking, breathing without machines, held a journal. Granger's old journal. She had begun filling the last pages herself. Drawings of ribs spiraling downward. Notes about reverse time. Sketches of faces she hadn't seen, but remembered. On the final page was a sentence she hadn't written, scrawled in jagged handwriting. Red ink bleeding through. Next rig due February 2nd, 2026. Lung donor. Pending. Final revelation. The spiral's true nature. It wasn't a curse. Not exactly. It was a system. A cycle. A cold machine dressed in myth, dressed in legend. And everyone who touched the road, who breathed under the eye, became part of its clockwork. You trade time for breath. Breath for life. Life for someone else's death. It was never about punishment. It was balance. Like a god made not of morality, but of math. Psychological climax. Granger's last thoughts. He drove now. Forever. Every night, his headlights cut through storms no one else could see. Every mile, the road unraveled beneath him. Sometimes dirt, sometimes flesh. And when he passed other rigs, he saw their eyes. Truckers driving without memory. Hauling loads they never picked. Some smiling, some crying, none blinking. In his passenger seat was a logbook that wrote itself. 1 entry per mile, in blood. And behind him, an endless stretch of rigs, like a funeral procession made of time itself. The ending closing the spiral. In Inuvik, the girl placed a single spiral-shaped stone at the base of a frozen memorial. No name, just one word, remember. And as she walked away, the wind shifted the snow. Beneath the white powder, another spiral began to etch itself into the ice. The loop had closed. If you want more chilling true crime stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the Veil of Secrets.